Hey guys, it's Kenny with the Long Run with Kenny. Um, and I'm here 1 week after the Cascades, Oregon Cascades 50 miler. Um, that was my second 50 miler I've ever done. I originally had a goal of doing it in 11 hours because the one I had done previously back in 2023, the Georgia Jewel, I had done in 12 hours. And this Oregon run was supposed to be um, a much substantially lower elevation. I think it was 4,000 feet total, whereas the one in Georgia was 7,000 feet. And this one in Oregon also had about 4,000 feet of negative gain, meaning downhill. So it was supposed to be super easy. It turned out this race ended up being the most challenging race I think I've ever done. Right behind it is surprisingly the Jones Gap Half Marathon, which takes place in South Carolina. I did that one a few years ago. And that one just really wrecked me because it was a lot of climbing. So kind of similar parallels to this one. That there was a section from mile 10 to 20 that was pretty much like 1,800 feet of gain in a very exposed Pacific Northwest climbing situation that really really busted my East Coast ass. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Pretty much, I wrote about this race really extensively on my blog, the long run with Candy.com. So if you want to hear a lot more about it, go there because I spent a lot of time and effort really trying to detail and recount my experience because it was so unique. This one, this video here, I just wanted to kind of mostly show up some of the footage I took because it was really beautiful. But in summary, this race takes place. It's kind of to the west of Bend, kind of in this area that Oregon Cascades. It started at the Swampy Lake Snow Park, about a 25-minute drive from Bend, which is where we were staying. And then it goes 50 miles north up to the city of Sisters, which is a 30-minute northwest drive from Bend. But honestly, the craziest thing about this race was that there was a very active wildfire. My wife and I, Jen, flew in from Asheville on Thursday night, and we actually saw the flat fire outside of our window on the airplane as we were flying in. We actually mistook it for a sunset because it was so intense, but you could tell it was hazy. We were definitely taken aback on the East Coast here in Asheville. We aren't immune to wildfires, but we haven't experienced one directly. Or we haven't really experienced one that has made me concerned about them. We had one in Gatlinburg a few years ago that was pretty devastating, but it wasn't on my list of things to be super worried about. And here we are flying in for this 50-mile race, and it's right there outside of our plane window. But even when we walked off the plane onto the tarmac in Redmond, you could just tell it smelled smoky. And then even the next day when we woke up to go to breakfast, it was still smoky, and there was actually ash coating the car door of our rental car. And I remember thinking, like, holy cow, am I really going to run through this? This is kind of crazy. I was really fortunate that my friends Katie, her wife Evan, and our friend Jordan, who all three of them used to live here in Asheville, they currently live in Portland. They were able to make the drive out to support me during this race and just to hang out and catch up. We all met up in Sisters for packet pickup, and it was extremely surreal. We got there, and the entire backdrop of the middle school, which is where the race finish was being held, is just this weird orange hue, and there was actually ash falling from the sky. Race packet pickup was a little somber, but we I'll show you a picture here of me and my shirt and my bib. But after that, we went out for dinner, and again, it was just so apocalyptic looking. I honestly thought they were going to cancel the race. I kind of was already making peace with it while we were at dinner, just because the air quality index was not looking good. But surprisingly, in the morning, woke up to an email said, hey, the race is on. And for this race, there were about 140 50-mile participants. We would be starting at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning, but there was about 400 100-miler participants, and they'd be starting at 6 a.m. that morning. So the morning of the race, I really took it easy. I was definitely still in East Coast time, so both Jen and I woke up so super early that I had plenty of time to eat food. I actually read out in the hammock out in my rental, and it was a beautiful blue sky. And I was getting pretty stoked to do this race. We got to the starting line. It was really just good vibes everywhere. Everyone was so excited. Perfect weather.
Look at you go! Oh my God! I love you. Go get him! Go, go,
And the first 10 miles were really uneventful. It was a slight downhill. I took a little bit of footage of just like a very quintessential Pacific Northwest view of trails. The trails were definitely very dry, and parts were even so sandy that it felt like I was running on the beach. Very, very different than what I'm used to, but at the same time, it was a lot easier, not having to worry about roots and rocks, and really just cruising. I met the crew at mile 10, changed out my water, said bye, and kept on moving. They surprised me with another stop at mile 13, which was unexpected. Actually, turns out they weren't, that's not a planned aid station. They just happened to be heading to a waterfall and happened to see that the race was going that way, and stepped out for a sec to say hi. And then after that, that's when things got really, really tough. Around mile 14, we started doing this intense uphill climb. I knew it was going to be tough, but I had to walk the whole time, and because it was so exposed and because there was just so much sun and some pretty rocky terrain, it really took it out of me. I knew the next aid station was at mile 18, and I felt pretty drained. Central Oregon was also going through a heat wave as well. The temps, I think, were in like 93, 94 degrees at this time. And yes, it is a different type of heat compared to the Southeast, where that kind of temperature plus humidity, I'd be like drenched in sweat. Here, it wasn't really the sweat, but you could just tell I was dehydrated. My lips were so chapped. I was so thirsty. I feel like I just couldn't get enough water.
Oh, my mile 17. Felt pretty shitty there for a little bit. Kind of have a second wind. Really looking forward to that aid station up here. I think it's in a mile. Running low on water. Need some electrolytes, maybe a soda. But yeah, feeling better now than I did half an hour ago, so that's good.
I actually ran out of water. I was carrying 500 milliliters of water and tailwind. And I sucked it all down, and I think probably ran out of water within a mile of the next aid station. And I did something that I never do. I actually sat down on a log at one point because I just felt like my heart rate was out of control. And I don't ever do this. Usually it's like, just keep walking forward. I even had another runner ask me if everything was okay. And I really appreciate it because that is unusual. And I could tell I was just spent. But I got to the 18 mile marker, which was the next aid station. And I was able to drink a bunch of electrolytes, drink some Coke. I downed a bunch of water. I ate a peanut butter jelly sandwich. I had a pickle. I spent a lot of time there. I think my mile split for that section ended up being a total of 30 minutes. So I'm sure I trugged along on that mile for probably a 15, 16, 17-minute mile, and then spent probably 13 minutes hanging out at that station. They luckily had sponges with a bucket of water, and I just doused my head. I felt a little bit more regenerized after that, so I went ahead and just kept going, even though at the time I was like, man, I'm supposed to run 30 more miles after this. This is insane.
So I'm at mile 21. Finally got the downhill section. I don't feel great. The uphill really, really kicked my ass. The heat, the exposure was not great. I tried to eat as much as I could, drink electrolytes, but man, kicked my butt. Next aid station's in 4 miles, so we'll just take it from there. Smoke's kind of getting involved now, so that's cool.
But as I crested mile 20, it started finally to enter the downhill section. And also during this time, I had some cell phone service, and I was definitely texting some friends, and everyone was being really encouraging, and they said they were tracking me, and were just very supportive and just shocked that I was doing this. So I think it just brought a little bit of motivation to me, and I kind of knew, hey, I'm going to feel better if I keep going and just keep fueling myself, and the temps are going to start to drop as we move into the evening. So it was kind of a slog from mile 18 to 25, but I started to feel a lot better, and I was actually able to jog a good section of this portion.
I'm at mile 24.83, almost 25. Getting close to that next aid station. I need it. I'm almost out of water. My mouth is so dry. Combination of the heat, dryness up here, elevation, and smoke. I could kill for a cold Dr. Pepper. I feel okay. Not feeling great about hitting that 11-hour goal. Might be closer to 12 and a half. Luckily, the next stretch is a 10-mile downhill for 2,000 feet. So hopefully I can kind of cruise. Is my nose burning? Probably. Anyway, this is probably the closest I'm ever going to get to walking on Mars. All right, I'm gonna keep trucking along.
Once I got to mile 25, the next aid station, though, the smoke definitely was starting to become a factor. You could kind of see the haze in the air, and you could smell it. When I got to the aid station at mile 25, I really give the most insane amount of props to those volunteers. A lot of them were wearing masks because that area was just so exposed, so dry, and so smoky. They were dressed up wearing tuxedo t-shirts and had this like red carpet set up. And under normal circumstances, this would have been like just a very cute, comical way to like welcome us in. Under these circumstances, it just felt very like, man, this is kind of insane what we're doing. I heard some of the volunteers claim that the air quality index was at like a 215, which is like very unhealthy. But earlier in the day, it had been at 300, which was like hazardous. A lot of people were assuming that the race would probably get canceled for the 100 miler, which kind of to me made sense because it just felt like that wasn't, it just felt like it was too, I don't know, dangerous for these guys to be out here and for the 100 milers to be breathing this in for 24 hours. I thought about stopping. I didn't feel the smoke or the air quality directly affecting me. Sorry, I've got my fantasy football live draft happening in like 20 minutes. I was like trying to cram this filming in real quick. So these guys are blowing me up trying to get ready for that. I think I just knew that like I would regret it if I had pulled out, and I knew the danger was there. However, since I wasn't feeling it directly, I think my motivation to finish that race just outweighed the concern at that. Like anything in life, you choose what to do to your body, and I think I stand by the decision to run through that crap. I currently it's a week out. I still feel okay. Um, I know it's not good for me. It was probably pretty awful for my lungs, but I trudged forward, and from mile 25 to 35 was pretty desolate. I think I only passed or was passed by a few runners, maybe like 4 or 5. And this section was beautiful. It was creepy. It looked like I ran through a previously burned forest, I guess, and the scenes felt like a literal like being pulled from a scene of Lord of the Rings. It was very, very eerie. I also was listening to a podcast at this time about the rise and fall of Alexander the Great. So I think my brain was just kind of like really mixed up at this time. I made sure to make sure I was, you know, eating my goos and just really concentrating on just trying to like keep a consistent pace. And luckily, this section was downhill, and I knew I'd be seeing my crew at mile 35, so I was pretty stoked. Around like mile 32 or so, I hit this really cool spine of a mountain with this beautiful view of the haze and the sunset. And a race photographer was actually nearby, and she snapped a few photos. And I haven't seen them yet, but I really hope they capture just the elation I was feeling. Because by this point, I just kind of knew I was going to finish this thing. I felt pretty good. The temps were dropping. Um, Everything was going well. And at mile 35, I saw my crew. They were fantastic. I changed my socks. I couldn't believe how dirty my feet were. Refilled my water, and took a little bathroom break, and then I was off. After that, things got a little wild. I mistakenly looked at my race plan, and I guess there was a bad conversion when I uploaded it because it told me that the race cutoff for the next aid station was an hour and a half from the point that I saw, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to make that. And I didn't have service, so I couldn't validate what was going on with that. So I just had to assume that was correct. So I started booking it around mile 36 to 39. I think I hit like a 10 minute mile pace at that point. I was really flying. And I felt good. I had my headlamp on and things were starting to get dark. And this section actually reminded me a lot of the East Coast, very like pump track style mountain bike weaving through. I actually found it kind of fun because my headlamp only shows a limited view, and I'm looking for the flagging tape, and I'm also kind of checking all trails, make sure I'm okay, but I'm also running really quick, and I got like I guess a third wind. However, at mile 39, 38 or so, I caught up to 2 other runners, and we were about to cross this like major road intersection, and this woman in a red truck rolled her window down and kind of shouted at us very like nervously. She's like, "You guys got to get off the trail. They're evacuating all of Sisters." And we kind of were confused. It was, you have to give me a break here. Like my brain's not really fully functioning. I knew I had service, so I was like, okay, let me keep going. I knew that the next aid station was at mile 41, so I was really close. And I just wanted to hear it from the aid station officials because I just didn't really quite comprehend that, like, they would have sent something by this point if it was that serious. So I kind of quickened my pace and I started moving quicker. And I could tell that in my headlamp, I could see more smoke and more ash. And it's kind of funny about it, thinking about it now. I can't remember. No, yeah, that's right. Before I got to the aid station, I crested this hill and I saw the fire, and it was absolutely terrifying. I didn't take a picture, but there's this picture from Instagram that someone else captured, and you can kind of see how scary this was. So I panic, right? Like, it's definitely a repercussion from the Asheville hurricane, um, natural disaster situation. I saw that fire and just kind of was like, this seems like it's out of control, and this seems like it would be my luck that I would live through two crazy natural disasters, and this fire is going to spread. And I'm not going to have cell phone service, and I'm out here in the woods alone at night. Um, so I called Genevieve, and her and my crew were in Bend, and they answered, and they were not worried about at all. They were like, "Hey, like the evacuation zone is very much north of Sisters. The area you are is totally safe. Everything's fine." They're like, we're gonna come to the finish line. Don't worry about it. Seriously." And by this point, I also received an email from the race director that said that they were halting the race due to the air quality issues, as well as the evacuation orders, but not necessarily because the race was in the danger zone, is because the volunteers and other race volunteers, their houses were being evacuated, so they had to leave. So I hit the last aid station at mile 41, 42, something like that. And as I cruised in, these guys were blasting AC/DC's Hell's Bells. And part of me was like, I don't even know. Part of me was shocked at how loud it was and how normal it felt, and made me feel like if they're making fun of it, they're not worried about it. So I shouldn't be worried about it. But also part of me was like, this feels wrong. I don't know. But once I got there, I talked to one of the aid station guys while, I was telling him I was panicked. I was like, I'm from Asheville. I went through this hurricane. I was like, my brain feels like it's losing its mind. Like, should I stop? Like, should my friends come get me? Or are you guys shuttling people out? And I could tell he just identified really quickly, and he just kind of looked at me and he said, "Hey, I totally get you. I lived through the Reading fire. I understand what you're saying." He's like, "Here, have some Coke." He's like, you're so close to the finish. We were instructed to let you guys go ahead and finish because it's the easiest way to get to Sisters. Sisters Middle School is actually being used as an evacuation center for the other areas of town, so you're totally safe. Don't worry, we got you. You got this. And I'm really thankful for him because he gave me the confidence, and just I felt safe, and I said, okay, here we go. So I called Jen on my way, and I told her, hey, I'm going to be done in the next 8 miles. And I told her I was going to book it. I thought I was going to really crush it. And I kind of also was still worried that, just in case the fire spread, I wanted them to get to the main road of Sisters. So at least we could like pick me up. I'm telling you, I had totally lost it. I realize now in retrospect that I was being a little hypersensitive to everything, but at the same time, I stand by being cautious. Yeah, it's just safety first always for me, I guess. So I ran pretty well for a few miles. I hit the last unofficial aid station at like mile 47. It was actually an aid station meant for the 100 miler, but they let us stop and grab some Coke and some water. And I talked to one of the aid stations there and aid station volunteers, telling her how thankful I was that they were out there. And everyone was just so stoked to see us come through. They were just very proud of us. You could tell it felt like a normal race by this point, and also the air quality, in my opinion, felt a little bit better. I was seeing less smoke in my headlamp, and so I trogged on. And at this point, we hit this like gravel service road that was going to lead directly to Sisters. And holy cow, it was so wide that I felt really like ungrounded. My headlamp was kind of like making it seem like it was hitting the gravel. It felt like I was driving through snow, like on the interstate, but like you weren't going anywhere. It also was just boring because I couldn't see anything else around me. And by this point, also, I was developing a pretty bad like chafe issue with my shorts, and so I was just kind of uncomfortable. And I think for the last 8 miles by this point, I was so worried that I just kind of had stopped fueling myself. I think I'd stopped eating goos by this point. I don't think I'd even really drank very much water. So I started to really just tank, or bonk is the phrase that they use in the running community. I had to kind of run jog the last 2 miles, but I did pop my headphones on and I tried to listen to some Washed Out. I tried to listen to some Paramore, some comfort songs just to make it feel like, hey, this is just a normal end of your training run. I also got to talking to one girl who was from San Francisco, and it was her first 50 miler. And I really was just telling her how like excited I was for her to finish and how crazy this whole thing was. Um, as I approached the middle school, I was shocked that there was so little light pollution. I like couldn't even tell that we were in town. It was kind of hard to see the school, and as came around the corner, it felt like they just didn't have very many lights on. The finish line ended on a track, and there was some lights around the track, but everything else was pretty subdued. There were some factions of people all sitting around with tents, and as I came around the track, my crew was there cheering me on, and came around the track and finished. And I was greeted by my wife and a nice little wood medal. And then I spent the next like 15, 20 minutes hanging out in a camp chair, just talking to my friends and just kind of reliving the race. However, part of me was like, man, like we gotta go. Let's get to Bend. Like I still didn't feel quite safe, which was crazy because there were clearly they had the music turned down for the race. And then as we were leaving towards the parking lot, we were leaving. Almost got to our car, and almost at exactly midnight, they turned off the stadium lights. And I think it was to be considerate to the people that were evacuating at the school. Um, my wife drove me home, and when I got home, I pretty much took a shower and crashed on the couch and kind of awkwardly like laid and like ate some pierogies that she had left over from their visit at a nearby food truck. And then I just wanted to sleep. But man, reflecting back on it now, it took me 13 and a half hours. I finished it. It was an absolute whirlwind of a race. And I give all the credit in the world to the race directors. They had a really tough decision to make, not only to like host to actually start the race under those conditions, which I think was the right call at the time. They had no idea it was going to spread the way it did. And I know it was really difficult to halt the race. I mean, that's a huge decision. Out of all those 450 100-milers, only 3 of them got to finish. And this was a Western States qualifier, so I definitely feel for those that weren't able to. I heard some rumors that Western States is letting anyone that finished past the 60-mile mark get in. I didn't fact check that. And to be honest, I haven't even looked at any other website or anything about people's reviews of this race or how this was handled. But this is just my opinion. I think it's really hard to communicate across, close to 100 miles of trail with multiple runners without cell service and multiple volunteers panicking because their houses might be evacuated. So I think it's a just tough thing all around, and I'm just thankful I was able to finish. I think 86 out of the 150 50-milers finished. I'm sure many of them got pulled against their will, and I definitely am thankful that I think I'm thankful that my ultra pacer was off with that one cutoff, because it really did make me book it from mile 35 to 38, 39. I think if I wouldn't have done that, I probably would have gotten pulled at that last aid station. So yeah, that's my recap of the Oregon Cascades 50. Where I am now is it's been a week. This week I was supposed to do like 25 miles or something like that. For the week I did 3 miles yesterday, and I did a 10-miler today out in Biltmore. I felt okay. However, I've got a blister on my right pinky toe that's absolutely being difficult and really uncomfortable. And I actually had to cut the run short because it hurts so bad. So I'm trying to really take care of that because next week is about to be one of the biggest weeks. I think it's like a 71-miler week situation. I can tell I'm really fatigued and I'm tired, but I'm going to try my best to hit that week because I know this is really important. I've got 4 weeks until the 100. And my biggest takeaway is that, man, I feel pretty damn prepared for the 100. I feel like going through this really difficult 50 with the air quality conditions, the heat wave, just the elevation, just the general toughness of that course. The 100-miler is going to be half the elevation, and I'm going to have some buddies along the way to run with me. I feel pretty comfortable, maybe not confident, but just comfortable with the training that I put in. And I'm really going to try hard for these next 4 weeks to try to hit those goals. But I'm also going to listen to my body because, yeah, I just went through a really big thing and I can tell my body's pretty damn tired. But um, other than that, I'm reveling in the accomplishment. I mean, I know it's a big deal and I don't want to minimize that. It was something that was very, very difficult. And I'm really proud of myself for finishing. And I am hugely grateful to Jordan, Katie, Evan, and my wife Jen for supporting me through it. I know even though they didn't run, the fact that they were there and just were at all the aid stations and to answer my phone calls was so, so valuable. Hey, buddy, I know. All right. Other than that, till next time.